call to order and turn things over to Dr. Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Natale. I'm looking for Mrs. New, and I'm not seeing her yet for the first item. The first item on the agenda is our IU5 liaison for a 3-year term. That term begins in July and goes through 2023. Mrs. New has been doing that for the last few years. Alan, you and I haven't talked about this, but I'm assuming you would like for her to continue. And seeing how she's not here, all in favor?
Well, I did not have a chance to speak with her about it, but you're right. I guess we probably should wait till she logs on. Maybe we could skip number 1 and get back to it. Hate to put her on the spot, but no, we didn't have a chance to speak about that directly. Okay.
Ed has a pretty quick budget review tonight. He's already gone through a lot of this stuff, so he will cover this rather quickly, I believe. Mr. Barnes?
Thank you. I'm using the PowerPoint file that is in your folder. I'm just bringing it up on the screen now. So for agenda item 2, I'll go off the PowerPoint. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so for the general fund, really not many changes here. 2.5% real estate tax increase. George tweaked the homestead farmstead exclusion resolution. That's on the agenda tonight for your consideration. Tax savings is about $87. So really not much changes with general fund. The I did update the tax impact. So if you look at the average assessed value home in Fairview, about $205,000 in the yellow. You can see this year's tax is $3,742. And with that 2.5% tax increase, we add 93 to that tax bill. And what you might see in the paper is the tax per 100,000 of assessed value. The current year tax is $1,828, and we add $46 per 100,000 of assessed value with that increase. So that is there for your reference, but really, other than that, there's really not much of a change. The forecast is still the same. No changes there. Under committee reports tonight, I think this is agenda item for motion number 2. Yeah, motion number 2. So that is general fund. Before I move away from that, any questions out there? I'm going to cover the other funds, so capital projects, district retirement benefit account, and food service. Under committee reports tonight, that is motion 3. So you might remember me talking about cap projects. This is a summary of the fund. This is a fluid fund, so you'll see changes to this probably almost monthly as we go through the year. This identifies the beginning balance this year, and you can see the transfers here. So the balance is supposed to be about $11,155,000. If you look at the treasurer's report, cap projects balance $9,912,000 at the end of May does not include the transfer from the fund balance plan from previous year. So this $1,359,844 is not in there yet. We'll transfer that fairly soon here. So you'll see that balance jump up based on that transfer. So these are the estimates for the future years for 2021. This expenditure total, $2,397,000, is for the most part high school debt service. There's some other stuff added to it, but a lot of that's the high school, the first year of the high school debt service. And so balance at the end of next year, $10,157,000 is the estimate there. So that's cap projects. You can see this fund anytime. you guys have access to cap projects. You can go into it, look at the detail, see what's happening in the various buildings as far as our planning goes. And then just a quick look at that scenario we have for the high school renovation. So this has similar information. This has the transfer amounts. This $2,566,000 for 1920 includes that transfer I just talked to you about. So this shows the high school debt service payments. This scenario was done back in August of 2019. So as we get updated with the high school stuff the next few months here, we'll update these debt service numbers to reflect what's happening this year. I believe that these numbers will be lower than they're showing on the screen here. But I will get those updated for you. We have the second bond issue here, which we're anticipating 2026. We have the Erie County Tech School debt. I just took the 2021 amount of 100,000 out. We really don't know the timing of that project yet at this point. So anyway, this is the high school renovation debt service. So on cap projects, are there any questions about that fund?
This is Alan. I'm not sure your screen is up, Ed. I'm seeing your face and your name, but I'm not seeing a screen. I'm watching this on the PowerPoint online on another screen, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Can anyone else see Ed's screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Yeah, you can pick either him or his screen.
Oh,
it looks
okay.
like.
Maybe it's just my.
It was showing.
It was showing.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Now
yeah,
it's showing.
Good.
Yeah, I'm just switching back and forth
Okay.
between the view where I see you folks and then my PowerPoint. So
Hey, Fran just sent a note, said she's waiting to be let in. Whoever needs to let her in. Kelly too, it looks like.
Molly's working on that. Looks like Kelly's here.
Kelly.
Molly's
Hello,
working on it.
Fran. I don't
Okay.
know. Here.
I went back to an email that was I think it was May 19th.
Kelly is here. Hi, Kelly.
I don't know if I can
Hello?
figure out how to.
My whole family's here. We got in.
Can you have them do this so we can help Fran get on?
Welcome.
Okay, Fran needs,
Do you guys, can you give us the code so that Fran can get into the meeting? Does anyone know what the code is? for the
Right,
meeting?
I emailed it to her. She emailed me and I responded with the link to this.
Oh, Fran.
I think
do you
I
know
just
there was
texted
an
it to you.
email That would have been, that you would have gotten just like moments ago, or a text?
I think I just sent the link, but I'm not sure if that one works.
oh, thank you, Eric.
Okay. Okay,
Here, people.
all right, sure thing.
You're in.
Yeah.
You're
It will be good to get back in person together.
Yeah, we're hoping for next meeting in July to
Okay, I'm moving
have a
upstairs.
socially distant, live and in-person meeting. So hopefully this will be our last virtual session.
Alan, I'll continue on here.
Go ahead, Ed. Thank
So
you.
any questions on cap projects? So the food service fund, I did cover these back on March 9th, so I'm not going to get into any detail. We are planning on being close to break even with food service. You can see the blue line here, anywhere from just above break even, about 26,000, to pretty close to break even out in 25, 26. So there's not a price increase included for next year, but for the next 5 years, there's a nickel each year increase. So that is food service. And then the district retirement benefit account, you can see the transfer amounts of 100,000 each year. That maintains our balance at just over 600,000 out in 25, 26. It drops down just gradually over that time, but just over 600,000 there. So those are the funds. You'll see that on the agenda tonight for your consideration. Any questions on any of the budgets?
Yeah, how's the food service related to the free meals they're giving out right now? How's that going?
So, David, we expect to be at break even as of the end of June. We're going to be pretty close. I think we're showing a bit of a loss, but we did purchase a fair amount of equipment this year. Once we make an adjustment to depreciate that equipment, it'll get us pretty close to break even. Paul expected, my assistant Paul, who is in charge of food service, he expects to be break even for that June period. We're going to also serve in July, so we'll see the impact there. I think the plan is to serve in July. We won't serve in August. We'll get prepared for the next year in August. There's a lot to do in that area to get ready. So I'll update you more on July 13 next meeting on how June turned out.
Okay.
Anything else, Ed?
That's all I have.
If we can circle back then, hi, Fran and Kelly, welcome in. Sorry about the confusion. Hopefully this is the last online meeting. We'll be back in person. But
we'll
we're
get
gonna
an
circle
email
back,
this time through.
circle back to item number 1. And Fran, we tabled this one for a minute for you because it is the appointment of the IU5 liaison for a 3-year term. And Fran, you have been enjoying that position we know so much for the last several years. And I think there's hope that you'll volunteer for that again.
Sure, it's not too bad.
Awesome.
Thank you for the ringing endorsement, Fran. Appreciate your service, Fran. Really do.
I get a lot out of them, so I'm fine with that.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Folks, the next item is the 2021 school calendar. Ed, do you want to pop that up? Do you have access to that real quick?
Yeah, hang on 1 second.
So the board approved a school calendar back in what, Molly? February, March?
February, yeah.
Yeah. So the board approved the calendar back in February. We are requesting that we approve an amended calendar, mainly because of the time that we're going to need at the beginning of the year with teachers. So I've reworked this calendar a little bit. It does change the student start day. It does also change the teacher start day. So there it is right there. The biggest change there is in August. We were originally having teachers come in on August 21st and 24th, and then students were going to begin on the 25th. But we really need a little bit more time with our teachers this year because of the planning for the potential red and yellow and green phases. So we're recommending here that we start the year with 4 in-service days, and we're bumping them to the 26th through the 31st. We like the idea of starting with a 4-day week followed by another 4-day week for kids, September 1st there, and then followed by another Labor Day 4-day week. There aren't any other significant changes, really. We're still taking a half a day in the day before Thanksgiving on November 25th. The winter break doesn't change at all. That semester break changes a little bit because of the timing. It just gets pushed back a couple of days. So instead of the 14th or the 15th being the end of the semester, now it's the 21st. And by contract, we have to take an in-service day following the first semester. So that'll be a 3-day week there for students, the week of January 18th. February 15th just changes from an in-service day to an Act 80 day. Act 80 days count as student days, but students aren't in school those days. We use them for professional development. Spring break does not change. We left that exactly the same. Memorial Day obviously is in the same spot. And then the end of the school year does bump back for students to June 8th. But what this calendar accomplishes for us, it gives kids an extra week of summer, and it gives us that initial time at the beginning of the year to get some important planning done for the start. So we are requesting that we wanted to get this approved quickly so people can make plans. We know that people already have plans, and so they're going to change their plans a little bit. But I don't think this alters things too much for families, but it does give us that time at the beginning that we think we need. We have reviewed this with the administration. We've also sent it to the Education Association for their review, and they didn't have any questions or concerns with it.
Eric, how does that align with the tech school calendar?
It's a little bit off of the tech school calendar, David. I think their start date, if you can scroll back up there, Ed, I think their start date is just a couple of days earlier, but we'll still send our students to the tech school on those days.
Oh, okay.
So it won't be an issue. The days that we don't have school, that they do have school, we still run a bus.
Okay.
And I think Matt and Luke could tell you, our tech school students don't like to miss. So they typically go on those days.
Got it. Okay.
Every school district is off a little bit with the tech school. I don't know that anyone is completely aligned. Maybe Harbor Creek. I'm not sure, but most districts are off by a couple of days, and we just make it work. Even if we were to go, when we talk about red, yellow, and green, even if we were to go into the yellow phase, which our yellow phase is going to be different from the tech schools, it won't impact our students' participation and attendance at ECTS. They'll continue to go when they're scheduled to go.
Okay.
Are there any questions on that calendar? We are asking for an approval on that tonight so we can get that into our scheduling system, get it on our website, advertise it for parents. Like I said, it pushes the start date back for kids by 2 days? 1 day. They were going to start on the 25th. I'm sorry, pushes it back more than that. Pushes it back a week. They were going to start on the 25th. Now they start on the 1st. Great. The next item is item number 4. This is, you've seen this already. This is that emergency repair that we had for Spader on the water line. Because it's a capital projects purchase, it has to be on here again for a second time for your approval this evening. So that will be on the agenda tonight. The return to play plan, you've probably heard about this. This is a requirement from the state. So we have a couple of plans that our board is going to have to approve. We have a safety, what are they calling that? A safety and health and safety plan. A health and safety plan that we're not prepared to present yet tonight. We're still working on for next school year. And that's the plan where we have to identify our schools, our status for red, yellow, and green. And the other plan that we have to approve is a return to play plan for sports. The reason we're getting that one to the board tonight is so that we can't start any PIAA sports until this plan is approved. George can tell you that a couple of districts have already had it approved. Others are having it approved as soon as possible this month, hopefully before July. Lindsay, our AD, has done a really nice job working on this plan. George has reviewed it for us. And Lindsay is here tonight to give you a summary of what's included. It's all yours, Lynn.
Thank you. So Ed, thank you for putting the chart up. The chart is really, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The chart is really a summary of the return to play plan. What I found when going through it, it's several pages long, but you end up reading the same material over and over and over again. So the chart that I put together is meant to make it easier for the viewer to see how things change as we move from different phases, and also how things are different between various sports. So across the top, you'll see the colors red, yellow, green. And just to clarify what green plus means, we are not going to be permitted to compete. In other words, our fall season is not going to be able to start until, number one, we are in green, which will happen on Friday. And number two, the PIAA has to give us the go-ahead. So that's what green plus means. And you probably won't hear that anywhere else. I think it's just kind of something I came up with because we need to be in green plus the PIAA needs to give us permission. You can see the major areas that we're working with: the pre-workout screening, how it's required in yellow, recommended in green plus. Attendance is required in green as well for contact tracing purposes. In terms of the weight room, the other athletic directors and myself had kind of come to a conclusion that we felt like yellow was too much to have a weight room open. So we all chose to keep the weight room closed in yellow. But then as of Friday, that will be able to be opened up and we will be able to get kids into the weight room. Gathering size is another kind of a challenge for coaches, but as we move into green on Friday, it makes it a lot easier because you can see that the total number of individuals in any one location is increased immensely. So we won't have any problems on the turf or in the gym, in the pool when we're talking about our athletes getting in there to work out and get ready for the fall season. The equipment all can be shared. We just need to make sure that coaches and players are kind of making sure that they're being cleaned before, after, and during practices intermittently. If you scroll down to hydration, that was one that Nicole Parker, our athletic trainer, and I, we really were concerned with in the yellow, because in the yellow, athletes needed to bring all, and I should say need to bring, because if we move back into yellow, they need to bring all the water that they're going to use for their practice session to practice. So they're not able to refill using our refill stations in the school building or the water trough on the turf. So that was going to be an important message to send to coaches, to send to players, to send to parents. But as we move into green, they are permitted to refill here on campus. The coaches are just going to need to be cleaning those areas before and after practice to ensure that those are okay. So those things across the top, those are consistent amongst all sports. It's now the bottom half of the document where you start to talk about the individual sports and their risk factors. So the original return to play plan was taken off of the NFHS document, and they ranked the sports in terms of risk. So you can see that the lower risk sports like golf and cross country, sports that already have some social distancing involved, are considered lower risk. The majority of our sports are going to fall in the moderate risk range. And really our high risk is football. So yellow presents a few problems and challenges for coaches that are moderate and high risk, because they have to modify or alter their practice sessions to focus more on individual fitness and skills, keeping the kids kind of separated. But as we move into green, it allows coaches to really kind of maintain their normal practice sessions, which would include contact, playing small-sided games on the soccer field, playing 5-on-5 basketball, and that is all allowed and permitted during the green phase. And then competition does not start until we get that go-ahead from the PIAA. And it's expected that if that's going to take place, we would get that in the beginning of August before heat acclimation starts for football, before preseason starts for the fall sports. The other document that you guys have access to is the pre-screening document that our coaches will be using when kids come to practice. So we are in the process of putting together kits for our coaches that include thermometer. I'm looking at them in my office. That's why I'm a sprayer for equipment, face masks that are disposable for coaches to use. I have disinfecting wipes, hand sanitizer. So they'll have these kits, and one of their responsibilities will be to record, because attendance is mandatory, record the coaches and athletes that are present, and then they will be taking the temperature of the athlete and asking them to respond to these questions. At any point, if the temperature is above 100.4 or if the athlete answers yes, they will have to be sent home from practice. In our coaching education, when we talk to the coaches about how to implement this document, a concern is that, it's allergy season and a lot of our kids suffer from that. A lot of us all do. And so knowing the difference between a sudden onset cough, sore throat that they wouldn't normally have under normal circumstances, so that they're answering those questions appropriately. But one yes or a temperature above 100.4 will get the student athlete sent home, and then they'll be required to follow up with their PCP before they can return to play.
Lynn's, one other document that you should probably review is the waiver.
Sure.
And we can have George chime in on that as well. So the waiver, from what we understand and talking with Lindsay, this wasn't necessarily a requirement of the return to play plan, but several districts were putting something similar together and having their solicitors look at it and keeping it as a part of the materials that the board was approving.
Right.
We sort of knew George's take on this, and we'll let him chime in, but it's probably more one of the it's probably more of a feel good thing for us than anything else. But Lindsay, you want to do a quick rundown of that?
Yeah.
Eric,
So
I'm
the
not able
waiver.
to open the waiver.
You can't open it?
I can't open it. It's grayed out.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to open?
You can just review what it is, Lynn.
Okay. Well, the waiver is the student athletes are going to be required to, the parents will read it. There is a portion of the waiver that is identical to the return to play plan. The pretty much the first page of the return to play plan or the resocialization plan is on the waiver. And then there are locations for 2 parent signatures and a student signature. And another important piece for Nicole and I here is that they label the sport in which they're participating. We are also going to ask coaches to help us communicate this to our student athletes, and they're going to be required to get this signed for each sport that they play so that we're sure that parents have been made aware of that. It also states that they can access the resocialization of sports plan on our website or in Schoology in a resource folder, in one of our shared folders.
So we have students and parents, I suppose, sign these types of waivers for when we run youth camps and things of that nature. George, you want to give the legal opinion on the waiver?
Sure. Parents are not able to waive the claims of minor students. Likewise, minor students cannot waive their own claims during their period of minority. So a lot of these waiver forms are good for a deterrent effect, but not very effective as against minor claims. But if you read the waiver, we also have language in there about communicable diseases like COVID-19. And we also have waivers for the adults that are signing, the parents that are signing the document. And to the extent that they have their own claims for damages, they can effectively waive those. And that's why I added language to the release or to the waiver language where you see that they understand what the risk factors are and who's a vulnerable group, and that instead of having one parent sign, I wanted both parents to sign that. So that's why we have both of those signatures there. If you're gonna have a claim waived, then you might as well have everybody that's potentially at risk. And in a communicable disease claim, that's everybody in the household.
Good. Questions about the return to play plan? Lindsay's done a really nice job on that. The athletic directors have been getting together pretty regularly and working on this plan. I believe Hollidaysburg was the first school out of the gate with a plan, and then that was that was used as a template for a lot of other schools. And Lindsay has tweaked ours to make it to personalize it for Fairview. And of course, we had George take a look at that as well, because even the other districts that George represents, Northwestern, are a little bit different. They all have kind of their own spin on things based on the number of sports that they offer and their facilities and things like that. So it is specific to Fairview, and it's a pretty comprehensive piece. Questions on the waiver? This is probably the time. I know we have some folks visiting tonight from Fairview Park and Rec, and this is probably the appropriate time for them, Alan, if you're okay with that, to ask questions, because this does apply to them as well. Lindsay and I did have a lengthy discussion about outside organizations using our facilities, and where we stand right now is we're pretty comfortable with most of the facilities, particularly the outside facilities, the outdoor facilities being used. So, for example, Park and Rec has a tennis tournament coming up. We're very comfortable with that, and we're going to encourage them to go ahead and plan for that tournament moving forward. If they were to request, however, maybe the cafeteria, for example, for a Zumba class or something along those lines, and I'm just making that up, we maybe wouldn't be as comfortable with that, just because of the personnel that might be required to assist with the cleaning, the disinfecting of that area. But the outside areas, the courts, the ball fields, the turf, we feel pretty good about our organizations, particularly a partner organization like Park and Rec, to use those facilities. Lisa, I know you guys are joining in. Are there other questions from your group?
Yeah, we do have a few questions. Primarily, speaking about what you just talked about, outside facilities, what are your thoughts on the pool? Because I know with the chlorine and everything, it's not quite as...
So we are going to allow the pool to be used. We will have some groups using the pool. Our water polo team, we have a neighboring district who is going to be using the pool for water polo a little bit this year as well. So we are comfortable with opening the pool. I think that we need to get some protocols set up for locker rooms down there, cleaning of those, because our summer crews aren't necessarily cleaning and disinfecting the locker rooms maybe as much as they should when the pool's in use. So we'll have to have some big notice on that, and maybe in those locker rooms, shut down a portion of the facility, allow for the restroom area, but shut down a portion of the other space. Just because I don't know that our summer crews are really equipped to keep that disinfected as often as maybe we would during the school year, because they're preparing for the opening of the buildings.
Yes, and I didn't mention that before. That's one of the messages that we want to send to the coaches, to send to our student athletes, is when the students are coming to campus to take part in a practice or a workout, we want them to come with the things that they need. We want to limit the use of the restroom as much as possible. Talking to the coaches one at a time. We really want to eliminate locker room use until at least Green Plus, when we know competitions are going to take place, because of what Dr. Kincaid just mentioned about making sure that those are being cleaned with our crew. So we do want to take a consideration into that and send that message to our kids.
Yeah, and Lisa, with that, if this were swim season and it was winter time, obviously we wouldn't encourage students to come in, with their suits on underneath their clothing and then leave with a wet suit, etc. But considering that it's warmer temperatures right now, we may be asking just that very thing of not only our water polo groups, but also the CWR group.
That's great news. Thank you. Would you guys prefer to have our participants also sign a waiver, the school waiver for using of your facilities, or would our own waiver be sufficient?
That's a George question.
I want to make sure that we do everything on our end, that you guys have procedures in place. We'd be more than happy to have every participant sign your waiver as well, to make sure that everybody's covered and everybody knows the rules.
Am I on? Yes, I am. Okay. Yeah, I would just assume that they signed our waiver.
Okay. We may need to tweak that a little bit. It might be specific to our athletes. So if you heard that, Lisa, we can make we can adjust that waiver form a little bit for your purposes.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy enough to do, yeah.
Yeah, it's easy enough to do.
Fantastic, thank you. Also, the same procedures that you guys have in place with taking temperature or those things, will we be required to do the same thing?
We would like for you to do the same thing.
Okay, so maybe Lindsay, you can email me whatever forms you have, and we can start implementing that. Wonderful, thank you so much. And I believe that you guys have some questions as well? Okay.
Was there something else?
I think those are all the questions pertaining to the program starting.
Okay. And Lisa, as we said, what we would really like to do is, as you transition into the new programming, we would like to take a look at them on a case-by-case basis and make sure that we can accommodate. Obviously, we want to accommodate. We want to get Park and Rec back up and running and getting folks on the campus again. But we want to be wise in the way we do that and selective in the spaces that are used.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will do whatever you guys tell us to do.
Awesome. Very good. Any other questions for Lindsay for the return to play plan? If not, the next item is PC bids for our library classroom at the middle school. Dr. Zona?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So this is just part of our yearly upgrade of some internal desktop computers. This summer on the slate is the middle school library. So Brian has spec'd out and bid 35 computers and monitors from Expert for a total of just over $24,000. And you know, if you care to know, Brian has moved away from the big bulky desktops, so he's just buying an upgraded monitor with a computer box that attaches on the back of the monitor. That's not on for approval tonight. We are still monitoring, no pun intended, how we're going to use those shared computer labs. But we did want to get it on committee of the whole for tonight.
Brian is here with me if there are any questions of him.
Brian knows the name of that computer box that goes on the back of the monitor, by the way.
What's it called? A NUC. Next unit of computing from Intel. And Fran's nodding her head. She's familiar with it. Folks, the next item is the purchase over $2,000. This is for the learning book purchase from Scholastic Education for the elementary school. These will be paid for by the Title IV account. And I think we've already had this discussion on these. Ben, anything to add to that?
No, it's just going to supplement our reading program for the summer to get kids reading more.
Okay. Folks, items 8, 9, and 10, these are all traditional recurring contracts. One is with IU5 for our SAP mental health program. That's our student assistance program. Pyramid is our drug and alcohol program through our student assistance program. And Safe Harbor Behavioral Health Agreement. These are all three traditional. No changes to these contracts from previous years. They sort of just get renewed each year. George always gives us the okay on those prior to board approval. You have heard us talk a little bit about the creation of a cyber program. I know those of you who are in various committees on our reentry plan, on our task force, have heard about these. We are in the process of developing, I'll call it our own cyber program. It's going to probably be a hybrid, though. It's going to be our program with the courses that we create or that we're able to create, and then a combination of piecing some other programs that are well done on the market for purchase along with ours. Justin is working with several teachers right now on putting these courses together, but at the end of the day, our goal for this program is to have a standalone cyber program that would allow us to compete against the other cyber charter schools like Agora, PA, Cyber Charter, et cetera. The difference with this program is it'll be ours. Students will still be enrolled in the Fairview School District, and they can still receive a Fairview diploma. I really think that somewhere down the road, I brought this up at our last superintendent meeting last week. I really believe that somewhere down the road that we need to do this on a larger scale from an intermediate unit standpoint. I talked to Dean Maynard and Brad out at the IU about this very thing, about maybe collaborating, a bunch of districts collaborating to create an IU5 cyber program that all districts could use, because it's something that we need in the county to combat the number of students that are going to cyber. We're all afraid, as school districts in the county, we're all afraid that we're going to lose more students this year and coming years, particularly with the fear of the pandemic. And so we want to be prepared to have something to offer students. We have been offering students an online program through Edgenuity and some other courseware that we own or that we lease. And this one would be a little bit more specific to Fairview and geared toward our curriculum. So the job description that we're asking you to approve tonight, we've posted that job description. We've had teachers applying for it already. Our plan is to take some of that CARES money that we have coming in, that grant money, and compensate teachers for creating courses. Now, these are going to be standalone courses that the teacher's not going to need to monitor. It'll be a course that if, let's just say, for example, Laura Jones, high school math teacher, was to create an Algebra 2 course. She would create that course and she would actually hand it over to us and say, here you are, Fairview, this is your course now. And then any certified math person or teacher could conduct and run that course, and students could take it remotely. So it would have embedded instruction, embedded video, embedded sample lessons, etc. And it'll be a standalone course for students to take, much like they would take an online course now. So much more detailed, much more robust than what we would do maybe in a distance learning opportunity, because the teacher won't necessarily have to be there holding the student's hand the whole way. So we'd like to have courses in grades K through 12. We'd like to eventually have a Fairview Cyber Academy, so that even the 15 students that we have right now, which is a very, very low number, going to a cyber program, we can entice those students to come back and be in the Fairview Cyber program. And that would alleviate, some students and parents aren't coming to school for different reasons. There could be phobias, there could be anxiety issues. They maybe aren't happy with the schedule for whatever reason. I know that we had some students before who were either big-time gymnasts or hockey players or tennis players who traveled a lot. So a 7 to 3 school schedule just didn't really fit into their day. So they chose to do online school. We may be able to entice some of those students to come back to Fairview, not pay that fee that we have to pay to the online institutions, and more importantly, give those kids what we think would be a better education. So we're working on that. I know lots of other districts too are working on something similar, or trying to find a package that's a little bit more competitive to lure students back into their own district. So we hope to have something by the end of summer to show you on these courses. Justin, you have how many teachers signed up right now to take part in that?
We have about interest from 20 or 25, and that just went up last week. So great. I think our goal is about 50% of the courses filled. I think we'd be happy.
Any questions on that, David? I know you had some comments on that before when we were talking about, you thought the need for that was there as well. David Mahoney.
Yeah, I mean, I like what I'm hearing. Obviously, not a lot of detail yet. One question that comes to mind: would we open that up to non-Fairview students?
No, we probably wouldn't, because that would be a tuition situation, and right now we don't accept tuition unless the board was to change that policy.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm interested to hear more about it, but I think you're on the right track.
Is there any kind of protection for that? I mean, as the courses are developed, can we, I don't know, patent them or something, or protect them from others picking them up and running with them?
Well, you'll have to have access to our Schoology link to get to them, Fran. So I think they'll be protected in terms of being password protected for access. As far as giving them some kind of a copyright or something, we haven't really looked into that yet. That's something we could probably work with either the Knox or the Quinn firm on.
Eric?
Yep.
This is Kelly Bryant, and I have two questions. Is there any individualization of the courses? And also, if someone's on an IEP or 504, how does that work online?
So those are both really good questions. Our plan on the cyber courses would probably be, well, Justin, correct me here if I'm wrong, because I might be getting red and cyber confused, but we weren't really looking for honors level courses. We were looking for courses that were more college prep level, so that all students could participate in those courses.
But are they individualized at all?
So, Kelly, I don't know if this helps. Like currently, when we have a kid in cyber for Edgenuity, the teacher takes the menu for content in the course, and then is able to tailor the course based on that student's, specific needs. We think that'll be similar with the Schoology course. So we will have a liaison. We haven't really identified how that'll work in the building. We're thinking an AmeriCorps member will be the liaison between the student and the teacher. And then the same will hold true, but more aggressively with the learning support teacher. So we're going to bill it as you have access to the learning support teacher. That's how that currently operates at the high school. If a student has an IEP, the learning support teacher helps oversee the course. They don't necessarily, manage every assignment on a day-to-day basis, but they would be in and around the course often. So,
Keith, anything else to add in terms of learning support taking the online courses?
Yeah, if a learning support or if any special ed child decided that the online course was the way to go for them, that would be governed through their IEP. So things would have to change in their IEP because they would no longer be taking classes face to face in school. Their case manager, whoever that would be, would provide accommodations in whatever course that may be. But I think the main thing to know there that if it is a student with a disability and that does have an IEP, there would be probably significant changes to that IEP that would need to occur for them to take that online course.
Now, Keith, if someone were on an IEP, the changes to the IEP itself, would it be more parent directed? I mean, depending on the IEP, they might need extensive help is what I'm looking at.
Correct. We would sit down as a team with the parent being part of that team and decide what we felt was best for that student to be successful in that course. And that's the direction we would have to take.
Okay.
So Kelly, one thing that we do know, and George could probably give you better detail on this, but even when one of our, if a regular education student, for example, goes to, I'll use Agora Cyber Charter since that's one that some of our students go to. There's a fee that's already established that the district pays that cyber charter school. If a special education student goes to that same program, it's a higher fee. So we know that there are additional. So I'll use the word allegedly. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but allegedly there's more supports put in place for that student when it's through one of those programs. I'm not familiar with them to really speak intelligently about it. I don't know what they do, but the same would be true for us. If we would have a student with some additional special needs, an IEP, et cetera, there would be some more responsibility on our end in terms of support. So it would cost us more per se, I suppose, but really no different from what we already provide in a brick and mortar setting.
Yeah, there's actually a formula that you use for calculating the tuition for the cyber charter schools. And it's different for each school district because it's based upon your budgets. And as a rough guesstimate, the special education tuition rate is about double the regular ed tuition rate.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is a capital projects purchase. This one will be on the agenda in July, but it's for FMS Master Locks. John, are you here? There you are. John Fichetti?
I'm here. Hi, this is John. Master locks for the middle school? That's for Brian's room, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Those are for lockers. Those are for
lockers. Yeah, I was gonna say that's not me.
Yeah, those are for lockers. Mr. Herring, I'm sorry. This would be some more, Mike, you want to explain that? This would be more similar to what the high school does. The high school right now, when students put locks on their lockers, the high school does not, the high school provides the locks for the students. So we have all the combinations. We have the keys, should we need to get into those. Currently in the middle school, students are bringing their own locks. So this will be a change for that. Mike, you want to add to that?
It's Steve here. Do you want me to
Steve,
speak to that?
Yeah. Steve.
We had quite a nightmare this spring when students left and didn't return, and then we had to get access to every locker to empty the contents. So that was about 580 regular lockers and about 300 gym lockers. We were asking for combinations. We were trying to open them. We ended up cutting many people's locks off because they either didn't provide it or it wasn't working. And we really thought that this would be a good time to uniformly get those locks. They'd be our property. We'd issue them to a student. We collected them when we were done. If we ever needed to get into a locker in an emergency situation, we could do so. If a kiddo couldn't get it to work, instead of cutting the lock off, we have a key that opens every lock. So many schools do this. I think years ago they did it for every middle school. When I arrived, in 2005, kids were providing their own locks, and we didn't see a need to change that. But given the circumstances and the fact we could be in and out of school in the future, we really think this is a necessity.
Steve, go back and look. What's the total cost of those locks?
I'm sorry, I don't have that right in front of me, but I tell you, did some extensive shopping for those locks to find the best price. We also wanted to have the ability for a 7th and 8th grader to give them 2 locks that had the same combo, one for the regular locker, one for the gym locker. And so the company we reached out to was able to do that, and still at the very best price. Mike, do you have that before you by any chance?
I have.
I'll let you speak.
Yeah,
we're between 57 and 5,800.
Yeah, 5724 is the total cost from Samico Supply. It looks like the locks are about $4.77 each. Okay, so that'll be an item on the July agenda. Now I have to go back. Hold on. Item number 13 is an interpreter contract with IU5. We have the need this school year for a sign language interpreter for a child. And this will be a contract with the IU. We won't be providing that interpreter. We'll contract that through the intermediate unit. So they are going to post that position for us. This is something that per an individualized education plan, we're going to be required to provide. And Keith, we had a couple of options with this interpreter. I think we opted for 4.5 hours a day.
Correct. We have a unique student coming into our district next year that is trilingual in one of those languages, requires her to have an interpreter throughout her day. Part of the IEP meeting in the spring, we agreed upon a 4-hour-a-day interpreter. It actually comes out to, I think, 4.5 hours because they need a lunch or 2 15-minute breaks or something like that. The other option was a full-day interpreter, 6.5 hours. that was agreed upon that wasn't needed, that was too much, and we could meet her needs with the 4.5 hours per day interpreter.
Okay. Obviously, one of the when Ed shows that list of potential risks in the budget each year, he always just puts special education services as a risk, not knowing what that could mean. This is not a cheap date with an interpreter. We're what was the total cost? 40 some odd thousand.
Yeah, 48, I think.
$48,000, but that's that's kind of the cost of doing business, and providing the resources that a student needs is certainly our obligation, and we're happy to do that. It'll be good for the other students too. We can maybe get some other students learning sign language, which would be pretty cool. The last item on our agenda then is personnel matters, and on personnel matters tonight, I'm going to look at it myself. We have all of our fall ECAs. We do have one unpaid leave there for our custodian, but we also have all of our fall ECAs on this evening. So that is all of our game managers, our band, our marching band, coaches for cheering, cross country, football. Some of our football assistant coaches, our head coach is on here for this evening, Mark Soboleski. Mark will be putting a staff together. But so far, he has Scott Bolheimer, who's a familiar name in Fairview. He's coached with us. Mike Parmenter, who has coached with us. Stephen Bloss and Dave Hudson, who have coached with us. The Chorneys, who have done some work with us in the past. We also have our clock operators, our soccer head coaches for both boys and girls, and then our weight room supervisors, and then our non-athletic ECAs, which would include prom advisors and SAD club and art club, etc., Battle of the Books, drama club, French club, all those advisors. Now, one of the differences this year, because we debated whether or not to put all of these positions on for hire, but in our personnel matters, when you approve that motion, it always says if the activity were to be conducted as provided by board action. So we know that our coaches are going to start, our fall coaches are going to start here in the next week or so with their students. So if for some reason we would end up going back to red, and so school is not allowed to happen in session, we'll be back online again, we would have an opportunity this year to prorate those salaries. Ed was asking today what we would do in the situation of a student council advisor, for an example, or a Spanish club advisor. And again, we would prorate those salaries, but those prorations would be based on the first student day, where the coaches' prorations would be based on probably July 1, when we expect them to start with our students. We're hopeful that we don't slip back into red and we won't have that issue. But if we were to have that issue, there isn't that legislation in place this year that requires us to pay people, that Act 13. And that's why all of our folks got paid last year, even though they may not have necessarily completed their obligations for a position. That most likely won't be in place this year. So we feel pretty confident going ahead and approving all those positions and getting our folks in place to either coach or supervise those activities. And was there something else on personnel I wanted to mention? Molly, am I missing something on personnel?
I don't think so.
Oh, there it is.
Eric, what determines the different rates? Is it contractual? Is it market? Is it?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. We actually have an ECA plan that's been in place for a long, long time. Those, so the salaries in the ECA plan have a increase each year. It's not the same as our teacher wage increase. It's a little bit less than that, but they just incrementally. Ed, do you know what that percentage is?
It would be 2.88 for this next year, for 2021. 2.88.
Okay, so it's actually a little higher than our teachers then. But that ECA plan has been in place, what, George? I don't know, 20 plus years. We normally have a board representative on that committee, and that's how those rates are established. If there's a new position that comes up, David, it's something that we try to just compare it to something that's already established in that ECA plan. and come back with a realistic number. I'd give you an example. Like a couple of years ago, we decided with all the work that our volunteers for Fairview Cares, we have one volunteer for each building that's on my Fairview Cares committee. So an elementary teacher, a middle school teacher, and a high school teacher. And we wanted to compensate those folks for the work that they do on that. We came up with a kind of a generic number of $500, which is kind of low if you look at in comparison to some of those other rates. But those folks were happy with that because they were volunteering to do it anyways. But they were spending a lot of time before and after school, so we thought it was fair to compensate them in some way. But yeah, these rates are long established rates, and then they just have that annual multiplier that goes with them.
Hey, Eric, I'm sorry. The increase is 2.63. You're right. It was too high.
Yeah, 263. So it's actually
263.
It's a little less than what our teacher average rate is in the current contract.
Okay.
But they are but to go back to your other question, they are kind of based on market average. If you look, for example, at our football coach at 9104, that probably falls somewhere in the middle of Erie County for football coaches. Some are in that $10,000 to $12,000 range. Others are probably in the $7,000 to $9,000 range. So I'd say we probably fall somewhere close to the middle there with our extracurricular rates.
I have a question regarding. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Fran.
Well, go ahead if it's a continuation, because.
No, nothing else on personnel.
Okay. I'm looking at some of the after-school monitors listed on here.
Yes.
And is that, so I was involved in the meeting this afternoon for the behavioral back to school, return to school task force. And like Ellie Tannenbaum, for instance, was talking about being available after school just for the kids if they needed anybody to talk to or anything like that. Is that what those are? Or is that a monitor for activities?
Yeah, so our after-school monitors at the high school, many of our students at the high school don't leave after school because they have practices that will follow shortly after the dismissal time. So that after-school monitor is a teacher that rotates and is available down in the cafeteria, and they monitor those students that are waiting in the cafeteria to go to a practice or an after-school activity.
Okay.
Madam, am I missing something there?
Oh, that's correct. Ellie may have been talking about the fact that the student dismissal time is 2:12, but the teacher contracted workday doesn't end until 2:50. So she and all teachers would be available during that time as well to talk to students.
Well, we talked about the need for counseling for some of the students who are having difficulty adapting to going back to school again. And I know we are short a couple of counselors, right? I mean, is that something that we're going to have more of? Because especially the younger kids, I really worry about their return to school and how they're going to handle that.
Yeah, we're actually in the process right now of interviewing for both elementary and middle school guidance counselors because we have a vacancy in both buildings with 2 resignations. So we hope to have those folks in place at our next meeting.
Oh, okay, good.
And we did add, if you recall, we did add the Bethesda employee at the middle school and the elementary school to complement the one that we already have at the high school in our refocus rooms. So there is an extra counseling component, if you will, in both of those buildings now starting last year.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Alan, that's it for personnel matters. I do just want to note, though, that the agenda was updated today. So if you had your board agenda pulled up earlier before Molly updated it, you may need to refresh. If you're just pulling it up now for the first time, it'll be fine. But if you already had it pulled up, it might need a refresh to get the most current agenda items.
Let me take a quick look.
Are you saying the committee as a whole agenda or the regular agenda?
The regular board agenda, David. If you had it open, you might just need to do a refresh or an update, a log off and log back into that folder so that you can have the most updated version. Molly, how recently did you update that?
At the start of this meeting.
I'm sorry, what?
At the start of this meeting. If you opened it when you logged into the meeting, you might need to just close it and reopen.
Okay. Alan, with that, Alan, if you want, if you want to look at the consent agendas.
Sure, I'm ready to proceed to consent agenda items. For the meeting June 22nd, under business operations, consent agenda items include minutes of the board meetings, budgetary transfers, budget amendment, and bills payable. Treasurer's report will stand alone as presented by Ed and Mrs. Sobin. Under committee of the whole, consent agenda items include, I have A through N, if my form is correct. Act 1 exclusion resolution, judicial tax sale resolution, IU5 special ed and Bethesda partial emotional support contracts, Fortinet purchase, FMS tech room purchase, the insurance, the return to play plan, purchase over 2,000, SAP mental health, pyramid SAP, safe harbor behavioral health, 2021 calendar, IU5 liaison 3-year term. Thank you, Fran. You already typed in there, Fran. And cyber course creator job descriptions. Is that everything?
I noticed that, Alan.
I think that was Molly's change, actually.
All right.
I waited until we had Fran for that.
Well, then I must have the right form.
You do.
Final budget will stand alone. Cap projects will stand alone. Under education and policy, just two, FMS guidance counselor and ECTS transition center. Under budget and finance, A through G, property tax appeals, copier paper, Extreme Networks, wireless, Quinn Law Firm retainer. Thank you, George. One call now renewal, and UNS technical professional support, and Serenic navigator renewal agreement. Under employee relations, just one item, William Spader emergency repair, and personnel matters will stand alone. I know that's a lot of ground to cover. Does anyone request that we separate any of those consent agenda items for individual voting? Hearing none, we will adjourn the committee of the whole and call the public board meeting to order and ask you can all rise. And
Dr. Kincaid?
I'm sorry, we have a question from Parks and Rec.
Sorry, we thought that we were on the agenda for the follow-up for the last board meeting as there was supposed to be a decision into our situation. We had a couple of the Parks and Rec board members here attending as well that had some questions as well.
We did not have that on the agenda, but we will allow for discussion during the public comment section.
Can I have the floor, Dr. Kincaid?
I'm sorry?
This is Mark Denuso. Can I have the floor?
Mr. Natale, during the public comment section?
Yes, we'll allow public comment once we get the meeting rolling. Public comment immediately follows the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. So we will have public comment shortly after the commencement of the meeting. So we will again adjourn the committee of the whole, call the public board meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please observe a moment of silence for those members of our community who have passed from the COVID pandemic over the past 2 weeks, at least one or two additional members of our dear community. Thank you. You may be seated if you wish, and we will now have public comment on agenda items. I understand Mr. Januso wants recognized.
Yes, thank you, school board members and school district administrators. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight, of course. I am here on behalf of the Fairview Parks and Recreation Authority, but more specifically, the supervisors of Fairview Township, Pete Krause, Ralph Heidler, and myself. We have, along with Dr. Kincaid and Ed Barnes, we have been part of the discussion regarding the financial distress that the Parks and Rec Authority has found itself in. I don't know how much of the history you were provided with last month. My intent here isn't to revisit all of that, but rather I did want to talk briefly about what we, the township, have done. And I know you've been told about it, but we wanted to come to you directly. First of all, we recognize, we talked to our attorney, who also happens to be a Quinn Law Firm attorney, Andy Schmidt. And Andy and George, I do know, had a conversation this afternoon and discussed briefly the relationship between Fairview Township and the Fairview School District regarding Fairview Parks and Recreation Authority. We recognize that that the authority is an independent entity, and it's actually separate from Fairview Township and Fairview School District. But we also look at it as though we are partners with you guys. And so I know that Dr. Kincaid advocated on behalf of the authority last month. Back in November, we started talking with the authority about the situation that they were finding themselves in then. And of course, nobody saw the pandemic coming and the impact that it would have. But nonetheless, here we are with an entity that is unable to sustain itself moving forward. Their cash flow is at a critical low. They have essentially furloughed and laid off all staff, or pretty much all staff, which is only two personnel. But we feel that the investment that we've made so far, which we paid $18,000 back in January, and then we essentially paid another $11,000 a month or two ago. We voided a check that was from the authority to the township for the agreed upon monies that come to the township for park rentals. Now, that's independent of you guys entirely, but when Pleasant Ridge Park and Avoni Beach Park are rented, 40% of it is kept at the authority and 60% is given to the township at the end of the year. We received that check in late December or January and decided to hold it, knowing that they were already in financial distress. And then a month or two ago, we decided to void that check, thereby giving them back their money. So the township has essentially ponied up $29,000 to try to sustain the authority during this time. We acknowledge and concede that we may very well be throwing good money after bad. But we believe that the authority is a vital component for our community. It provides a method by which it's a feeder program for various sports. I know that some of those sports are the coaches have taken over, or the school district has taken over administration of those sports, but there are still some that are run through the authority, and they are vital. We think, we as in even the township and my partners, we think that they're vital to the success of the athletic programs here at Fairview School District. So we're wondering what you guys are really intent on doing, because we're not saying we want to continue to just throw money at them. But back in November, when this conversation started, and I know Eric and Ed have done their due diligence and peppered this board, and Nate, their director, and Lisa, their administrator, with tons and tons of questions, trying to get a feel for where they are and how they're going to do and what they perceive their future to look like. And that was even before, like I said, the pandemic hit. So Pete, Ralph, and I want to know, are we really and truly partners in this, or does the school board think that the the township is responsible for preserving the authority in its present state, which we've done up till now, but we've invested 29,000. The school board was asked to invest 18,000. We know that that's a lot of money, but nobody foresaw any of this happening. And we just feel that this board has existed for 40 years. It was established in 1980, and we think it's an essential component of both what Fairview Township tries to offer our community and what the school district offers your families and the children that come through. So we would like to know where you guys stand, because if the school board isn't interested in sharing in this short-term burden, and trust me when I say we're not ready to throw another 18,000 at them next year and the year after and the year after, but we want to give the board a fighting chance. And we don't know what that looks like. And like I said, it could be throwing good money after bad, but this is a partnership, even though it's, as our attorney said, it's a body politic in corporate, and it is independent from you and it isn't independent from us, but it is a partnership. We appoint board members, you appoint board members, and we think it's vital to our community. So the supervisors of Fairview Township want to know if the board is willing to step up and give this this authority a little bit of life. And it might be a Band-Aid on a giant flesh wound that may not produce anything moving forward, but we're interested in knowing what you guys are thinking, because something's got to happen. Otherwise, it just goes away, and we have to be talking to you guys, and we have to be communicating about this, and we haven't at this point, so that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Januso. I know I can't speak for the board at this time, but this matter is still under consideration. And the administration will certainly maintain communications with the Parks and Rec and the township regarding the request. We are still concluding a school year and a budget year, and so that it's still under consideration at this point as of our last discussion. So it's not a yes, it's not a no, but it was a matter of, it's still a matter of discussion and study. So we do appreciate your comments, and we appreciate you coming, sharing your time with us this evening to share your thoughts.
Are there any questions for the township before we move?
No, at this point in the proceedings, we would just be hearing public comment on items, and we would defer to the administration for further discussions as far as procedurally tonight. Any other public comment on agenda items? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we're going to move on to business operations. Consent agenda items include, and I move board approval of the following consent agenda items: minutes of the board meetings, budgetary transfers, budget amendment, and bills payable. Can I have a second?
I'll second. New.
Thank you, Fran. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Bryant?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. New?
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin?
Yes.
Mr. Natale?
Yes. Treasurer's report, Mrs. Sobin and Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, just the reports presented for the period ended May 31, 2020. The general fund year-to-date revenues, $25,215,000. General fund expenditures year-to-date, $24,264,000. Total cash and investments on hand at month end, $6,815,000. Investments for all funds at month end, $17,632,000. The cap projects fund balance, $9,912,000. The district retirement benefit account balance, $739,403. The cafeteria fund, Year-to-date revenues, 603,267. Year-to-date expenses, 633,727. And the final report for student activities, the middle school balance, 2,484, and the high school balance, 49,413.
Thank you. I move board approval of the treasurer's report for May 2020 as presented, as well as the capital projects report, the category report, district retirement benefit account, and the high school and middle school activity accounts.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. LaCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Sobin. Any correspondence?
None.
All right,
Nope.
thank you. We do want to recognize our visitors from the Township and the Parks and Rec Authority. Thank you for joining us tonight. Maintain our communication with our administrators on this subject. Thank you. And all our other visitors who are with us virtually, want to thank you for joining us. Committee reports. The Fairview Board of School Directors met remotely as a committee of the whole on June 8, 2020 at 6:31 p.m. Board members present were Mrs. Bryant, Ms. Farrar, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. LaCarty, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Natale, Mrs. New, and Mrs. Sobin. Also in attendance were Attorney Joseph, Dr. Kincaid, Mr. Barnes, Dr. Zona, Dr. Lane, Mr. Bell, Mr. Farringer, Mr. Herring, Dr. Horn, Mrs. Skelly, Mr. Neese, and Mr. Ficetti. Committee of the Whole. Consent agenda items. I move board approval of the following consent agenda items for the Committee of the Whole as presented, including Act 1 exclusion resolution, judicial tax sale resolution, IU5 special ed and Bethesda partial emotional support contracts, Fortinet purchase grant funding, FMS tech room purchases, LLP SIP consortium property liability insurance 2020-2021, return to play plan, purchase over $2,000, SAP mental health agreement through the IU5, Pyramid SAP agreement 2020-21, Safe Harbor behavioral health agreement 2020-21, the 2020-2021 school calendar, the IU number 5 liaison for 3-year term, Ms. New, thank you, and the cyber course creator job descriptions. And I have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mrs. LaCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Final budget 2020-2021. Be it resolved that the general fund budget for the 2020-21 fiscal year in the amount of $28,007,000 be adopted. Said budget will be financed in part by a real estate tax of 18.74 mils of assessed value of property, or $1.87 per $100 of assessed value, levied under the authority of the Public School Code of 1949 as revised, a local services tax of $52 per person, a 1% earned income tax, and a 1% realty transfer tax levied under the Second Class Township Municipality Code as amended January 1971. The local services tax is authorized under Act 511 of 1965 as amended by Act 32 of 2008.
Second. New.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. LaCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Capital projects, DRBA, and food service fund budgets. I move the capital projects, DRBA, and food service fund budgets as presented. Second, please.
Second. New.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bacardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Education and Policy Committee, Mrs. Bryant.
I can't. Eric Hayes, can you please read that for me?
I'll try.
Thanks.
Let me see if I have to pull it up though. Maybe it might.
I can do it for you, Kelly. This is Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Is that all
I'm
right?
getting there. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
The FMS Guidance Counselor job description as presented. And see material from 6-8 in Committee of the Whole. ECTS Transition Center Agreements. So also see the same Committee of the Whole.
Can we have a second, please?
Second.
All roll call vote. Excuse me. Roll call vote.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bacardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you all. Budget and Finance Committee, Mrs. Sobin.
I move board approval of the consent agenda items for the Budget and Finance Committee presented. Property tax appeals, copier paper order, Extreme Networks wireless support renewal, Quinn Law Firm retainer agreement, One Call Now renewal, UNS technical professional support agreement, Serenic Navigator renewal agreement. Second, please.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bacardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Sobin. Employee Relations, ECA Operations. Back to Mrs. Bryant. Unless you would, let me read that for you, Kelly. I'll go right ahead. I move board approval of the William T. Spader water main break emergency repair at a cost of $4,600.36. Be paid from the Capital Projects Fund as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bacardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Personnel matters. I move board approval of personnel matters as recommended and or read by the superintendent and as identified in the personnel list be approved, and with the stipulation that the positions be filled only if the program or activity is to be conducted as determined by board action.
Mahoney, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Bacardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you for those reports and motions. We'll move on to liaison reports. IU5 liaison, Mrs. New.
I have nothing. We have a meeting on Wednesday, so I reported on our last meeting at our last meeting.
And again, for the final time tonight, I will thank you again for your gracious willingness to serve for another term.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Legislative liaison, that would be me. We had a conversation with Senator Laughlin regarding a sticky issue. I think I mentioned last time regarding, I may have mentioned this last time, regarding the high school renovation project. Maybe Eric or Ed want to fill us in on how that issue arose, how it was dealt with, and how Senator Laughlin may have assisted.
Yeah, Matt might be the best person. Matt and John have been working more closely with Vince on that. Dr. Lane, do you want to give a brief summary?
Actually, I don't mean to pass the buck, but I was only in on the very end of that meeting. At the very end, maybe John could. Sorry.
Well, the long and short of it is that there was some new legislation that requires us to have a tornado shelter built, and Vince and HHSDR recommended that we go to a local representative to help us either get a waiver to that or some kind of a postponement on the legislation itself. And Dan Laughlin just happens to be, not only our local representative, but also someone who has a construction background and understands, I guess, the ridiculousness of the procedure, the policy. So he agreed to meet with us and talk to Vince and John and Matt, and then I believe he had a follow-up conversation with Vince, and I know Dan is looking into it for us. It would be a significant increase in our costs at the high school to the tune of upwards of $3 million for this construction that really nobody feels is necessary. John, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, Vince met with Senator Laughlin last week, and the meeting went well, but the senator didn't think there was time to change legislation between now and the time of construction, but he was going to look into it and push it forward for other districts. But we also at the same time are working on an appeal with the kind of the governing body of the building permits, and he has offered, if he's in town and available, he will attend that meeting, our appeal. So that, I think that would be really good. So he's fully on board and believes that it's definitely a little not necessary for our area. So it went well, but it's just the time frame's a little too short.
Okay, thank you both. I don't have anything further on legislative liaison. Erie County Tech School, Mr. Honey.
Yeah, so they're looking at reopening options, especially in the yellow phase. They're looking at an A/B schedule for the students. Sounds like they've been working closely with the districts as far as getting the students out there, even if our plans are different. So that's good news there. They're also reviewing a plan to end their contract. So they currently have an outside company doing fingerprinting at the tech school. Originally started for district employees to go up there. Because of a new vendor they brought in, it's now open to everybody, non-school district employees, and that concerns them for security reasons. So they're considering ending that. I did bring it back to Dr. Kincaid, and he felt the impact would be minimal for our district. So I'll recommend, at least from us, we end that practice. Next meeting is Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Any questions for Mr. Mahoney? Okay, thanks again. Moving on to our solicitor's report. Attorney Joseph, anything further beyond what we covered earlier this evening?
I just wanted to comment briefly. I did have a conversation with Attorney Andy Schmidt in my office, as Mr. Januso reported during the public comment period, about the authority. And we've talked, and I have to agree with what Mr. Januso said. Andy and I both talked about the fact that the authority is a separate legal entity that was actually formed by the borough, the township, and the school district 40 years ago. And we currently have the township and the school district appointing members. And as I reported to you before, the school district does have the authority under the school code to join with the township in equipping, operating, or maintaining parks, playgrounds, etc. And you also have the ability under the school code to allow your facilities to be used for playgrounds and recreation when it's not being used for school purposes. So we talked about that. I know as a board, we need to get past COVID-19. We need to talk about reopening the schools and where we all stand and get past the budget. But I just wanted to at least reiterate the conversations that I've been having with the solicitor for the township.
Thank you, Attorney Joseph. And thank you for your agreement for your continued engagement with our district. Appreciate it.
I thank you. I've enjoyed a very long relationship with the school district, and I do enjoy it.
Thank you, George. Moving on to administrative commendables, Dr. Kincaid, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Natale. A couple things that I want to highlight that we've been up to here. As you know, we did a collection for bicycles to donate bikes to any student in the Fairview community who didn't have one or was in need of one. We collected nearly 100 bicycles, and I just want to really give John and his guys a plug. They collected those bikes. They helped to collect those bikes, and he has a little a bike repair shop going over there right now at the maintenance building. There's bike parts everywhere. They were swapping parts out to make bikes work. And last week, Julie Skelly and the principals put together a spreadsheet of all of the students with Molly's help who had requested a bike, and we started the distribution of them last week. Most people came and picked them up on Friday, so we had lots of happy guys and girls leaving with new to them bicycles, which was really cool, and a lot of happy Fairview kiddos. We weren't able to necessarily fill every request, mainly because of the sizes. It's really difficult right now to find a 26-inch bike anywhere. There's not a bike on a shelf at Walmart or Target or any of the local big box stores. So we did accommodate most students. We even took some of the monies that we had donated and went on Facebook Marketplace and found some used bikes and just went and purchased them to fulfill some of the requests. So kudos to all the folks who were involved with that. I also, just another thank you to Lindsay. She worked really hard on that return to play plan. She put it in a nice workable document for the board tonight to get approved, and we're going to be able to get sports back up and running here. Another thing that's been going on Tuesday nights is our Fairview School Foundation has been working with our administrative team to identify folks to give some nice hot dinners to. We talked about that last month. Steve has really, and along with Justin, has kind of taken a lead on that project. And I know Steve and Justin have been delivering every week, and then others of us have joined in to deliver at times. I know Matt, Ed Barnes, the assistant principals have been getting out there. Ben delivers every week. He loves the delivery gig. But it's nice to give those folks the nice hot meals, and special thanks to all of the Fairview restaurants who have participated. Sneaky Pete's again. We use Avonia, the Cakery, Sabo's, as well as the Chico's diner. So great little project that's been going on, and that was all with local donations as well as a match from the foundation. The re-entry task force that we've established, those groups have all met now, most of them multiple times. The communications group is meeting again tomorrow, Mrs. Bryant.
Yep,
You'll be with us. And the other groups I know have met more than once. They're working on their plans. We have, I think, Justin, your group meets again on Wednesday. That's the Teaching and Learning Committee. That's the big committee. There are about 20 people on that committee, and they're coming up with plans for what red, yellow, and green look like. They're coming up with schedules and different options. We know, obviously, that we're going green on Friday, and we're hoping that we start the school year in green. We really don't see any way to do the yellow plan based on the current conditions in the state. Right now, if there's not an interest or an approval right now to go to school less than 180 days, which there isn't an approval for that right now, Secretary Rivera has requested that waiver and has not received it. So as of right now, we have the 180-day requirement. I don't know how yellow works with that requirement. So even though we're planning for a red, a yellow, and a green phase, unless there's a change legislatively, I don't know how the yellow could possibly take place. But we'll be ready if it does. That group right now has honed in on a schedule that would allow kindergarten through sixth grade students to come to school every day. as normal. And then 7 through 12 would be educated in an online format in a yellow situation. In green, we know we'll be back. All students will be back every day with some modifications to some things like lunch and buses and other things like that. So we're working on that reentry plan. From that reentry plan, we will develop then the health and safety plan. The health and safety plan, when you look at it, when we first looked at it, it looked like a very difficult task. But now that we're into the larger task force plan, filling out the health and safety plan will be pretty easy based on all of the work that these committees are doing. I want to give a special recognition to our 3 administrative interns right now, Julie Skelly, Luke Bell, and Ryan Bookhammer, who are working very hard behind the scenes on that plan. They have the shell of the document that we're going to distribute to the public this week. If you saw my video last week, I talked about this document that's coming out. It's pretty much ready to roll. I just want my communications group to see it tomorrow. And after they give us the thumbs up on it, we're going to get it out to the community so they can see what all of the committees look like, what the committees are working on, and then what red, yellow, and green means for Fairview. And I think those are the big ticket items. Do any of the administrators have anything to add that I missed? And Steve?
I could talk.
We know
I'm good at that.
Ben has a second career after he retires from public school. He's really good at delivering food.
Hey, I never thought I'd get so into being a pizza delivery person. So.
Don't undersell. Ben has been delivering lunches every day for the last 2 months, as well as dinners in the evening. So he's putting a lot of miles on that car.
It's a lease.
And doing a lot of door-to-door service and getting a lot of FaceTime with families, which has been awesome.
And just so everybody knows, 2 of my teachers they kind of changed the Golden Apple Award, and they started doing shout outs to teachers, and both Paula Payton, whom we're very, very sad is leaving, got a Golden Apple, and the same with Bethany Russell. So we're very excited about that. And we are right now, for those who care about our size of our kindergarten class, we're at 107 and we're 6 students are going to be repeating, so that's 113.
We're pushing right up against that number where we're in need of that 6th teacher that we currently have, which means that we'll likely be coming to the board with that request for that additional 4th grade teacher that we've already budgeted for, but we've sort of been holding off on, because if the kindergarten numbers were to come in lower this year, we were simply going to move one of those kindergarten teachers to 4th grade. But since we're at 113 right now, 120 is kind of the tipping point. So we're starting to push up against that. And it looks like we'll be making a recommendation for both a guidance counselor as well as a 4th grade position. Anything else from the administration? Dr. Lane, sitting in your basement there?
Yeah, it's very nice down here. We just have some students taking some summer enrichment courses now. But I don't know if we need an update on that. We're going to talk about that, but we don't need to now.
Mr. Natale, we will send things back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kincaid. Molly, any secretary's report this evening?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to board remarks. Anyone from the board wish to address the group?
I would. This is Fran. I just have a request. If we could get a list of the board members and administrative phone numbers together, cell phone numbers together. I know we have them and we frequently will text everybody, but I don't know who's responding because I don't have names associated with those numbers. So if there's any way, Molly, I'm sorry, but it'll probably fall on you, but if there's any way we can get a list together, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
It's a great idea. Thank you. Anyone else?
Alan, can we just say thanks to all the teachers who are volunteering all their time on these committees? You know, we've got a ton of people. I mean, there's not just the teachers, but also the administrators and the board members too, but especially the teachers are really putting in a lot of time on their own free summer. Now it's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Special recognition, then the minutes should reflect our appreciation and respect and admiration for our professional staff, administrators, parents, board members who are putting in so much extra time to address the needs of the community during this time. Absolutely. Thank you, Pam.
And kudos for the administration for including as many teachers and staff as they have. I've heard from other districts that there's very few, if any, current teachers involved in their plans. So thank you for taking that open approach.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, as president, I have to tell you, it's been very interesting to chair virtual meetings. A lot of times we miss each other's comments or bits and pieces, difficult to communicate. But I want to thank the administration, Dr. Kincaid and Dr. Zona, and all of you folks for making these meetings effective and efficient, informative, and interactive. But I'm glad to see them go. So hopefully we will be all together again in the same room next meeting. Look for details on that, and look forward to finishing our fiscal year with sharp pencils and a close eye, and look forward to starting the new fiscal year in just a week or so ahead. Thank you all for your board service, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Dr. Kincaid, if there's nothing further.
July 13th, that will be our next meeting. We'll be face-to-face, and we plan to be right back in our normal spot at the middle school.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and continue to watch your emails and Dr. Kincaid's vivacious video updates. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Meeting is adjourned.